Hello, my friends. Today I'm joined by Elizabeth Ross, a speaker, master facilitator who helps people and organizations reconnect with presence, awareness, and more natural ways of working and living. Her work brings together mindfulness, sensory intelligence, and conscious leadership, but it also integrates neuroscience research, guiding people out of burnout and distraction and into clarity and alignment. With over 2 decades of experience, Elizabeth is known for her ability to create spaces where people can truly pause, reset, and access a deeper level of insight. Currently, she's traveling the country in her camper van, having real, grounded conversations with people about what it means to live and lead from presence. She and I met up while I was playing music in uptown Sedona last week, and I'm really excited for you to experience this conversation. Welcome, Elizabeth. I'm really glad that we've met, and it's incredible that we met each other while I was playing music in uptown Sedona, and you just walked up and you came and sang a Bonnie Raitt song with me. It was just awesome, and it's almost like we are fellow travelers on a spiritual journey of very similar paths. Where my work has been about neuroscience and non-reactive intelligence, you are developing what you're calling the art of being. And I really have enjoyed what little I've read from your older Substack and your new adventures. So would you just go ahead, for the people who follow my channel, tell them who you are, what's your passion, what's your direction now?
Thank you. It is an honor to meet you and have a fellow traveler on this journey and in this frequency, if you will. So just it's been a joy. I am, as you said, Elizabeth. I have been on a journey around well-being for the last 30 years. And in fact, I worked within the systems of healthcare and employee well-being for almost 3 decades. And at some point along the way, not at some point really, I had my own kind of health scare in 2015. And I realized that it was stress-induced. So I was carted out of my office as head of health and well-being at a large global bank. And it was stress related. I ended up with what they called a neurovirus. I wasn't able to concentrate. I wasn't able to really read I just really had to stop. And it happened to be at the same time of year where we were looking at budgets for the coming year. And at that point, I realized that I was really just pushing numbers around. That's what I'd really been doing for the last few years. And I thought, there has got to be something more. And as I began to talk about that with leadership, the CEO actually had gone through a mindfulness retreat. And he said, Elizabeth, you should look into mindfulness. And I did. And it resonated with how I grew up. It resonated with me being in the Sierras and spending, oodles of time outside by myself, exploring, just being in nature, being with myself. And what I realized is that the systems that we're in of work, of education, they don't teach the value of stillness. And I think we used to get some of that in church, and a lot of people have moved away from organized religion, and we aren't sitting side by side unless, maybe we are. I mean, I have a Sangha and I meditate. However, I think a lot of us don't. And so I began exploring, what is being? We're human beings, not human doings. And that is how I kind of launched on this journey. I quit my job without a real plan. I started teaching meditation or teaching. I don't like to say teaching really because I am not a certified teacher. I am a lifelong learner and I have many teachers. And what I really started doing was sharing. I started sharing practices of disconnecting when you're in the midst of work, because that was the world that I had come from, is that I'm in the midst of working, 60 hours a week, and the people around me were as well. And how do we stop in the middle of that? And so that started one aspect of this journey. And the current journey that I'm on, this cross country journey, is about how do I have conversations with people about these systems? Because I feel like we shine a light on each other, right? Look what she's doing wrong or doing right. And, what are you doing wrong and doing right? And I don't often sit around a table in conversation about how the systems are designed. The systems of education, of work, of sick care, they're all designed for us to be distracted and doing. And that's where this began. That aha moment of like that's what we need to be talking about.
Well, you came up with something that I read about the pause was a
Mm.
new idea for you, and I remember you reading that you said that you felt, I don't know, like apprehension or guilt over the idea of taking a moment to process instead of just responding immediately. And I've noticed that in myself as well. As like
Mm.
there's a programming from my childhood that if you hesitate, somehow you're going to be devoured, and it's some
Yes.
kind of ingrained fear. In fact, I remember when I studied martial arts, they had a plaque on the wall that says, "He who hesitates is lunch," and I was like, you know, but talk about the stress that your body goes through in that kind of system that you're talking about. So let's talk about the pause, how you came to
Mm.
that, and can you describe what your body felt like before you came to this idea about pausing?
Thank you. And all of that I have experienced myself, that the pressure. I would say the first language around the pause was when the CEO came to me and said, why don't you look at mindfulness for our people, for our 25,000 people? And I started looking into mindfulness. And at the time in 2014, there really weren't a lot of, programs. There were apps, Calm and some different apps, but there really weren't a lot of programs that an employer could adopt, for their population. And so my team and I, we basically researched 100 years of work. Like how has work changed? Like when I went to work in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, we took breaks. We took breaks. We took breaks for coffee. We took breaks for lunch. We literally disconnected. When you left your office at 5 o'clock, if you didn't have a key, you couldn't get back in, right? So you had, we've had natural breaks from work. And so when we started looking at the data, I was like we need to take breaks. My original company was called Break Together. I literally just renewed my LLC license and it was Break Together, or now my benefit corporation license. And so I thought, gosh, we're in downtown Portland, Maine, which is a beautiful little community. There's art museums, there's parks, there's all different kinds of things down there, bookstores. So I started leading people on breaks. I would meet at the office. We would walk 5 minutes. We would look at a painting for 5 minutes. We'd have somebody in the bookstore do a reading for 5 minutes. And then we'd walk back to the office. And the companies that I would, I'd lead all these little things all around town. And the companies would say, "Oh, thanks, Elizabeth. Come back next year. That was a great team building event." And I'm like, no, like it's not team building. We need to be doing this every day, right? And so that really brought me to, and then I started looking at the neuroscience. The neuroscience is plentiful around in the mindfulness field. And Judd Brewer is a wonderful researcher out of Rhode Island who does functional MRIs and uses those studies to look at the impact of pause on our brain. And I just started thinking about, how can we make it okay for people to take a pause without it being a team building event, right? And so I just use the language. I'm sure I didn't invent it, the power of pause, because it's simple, it's memorable. And I started talking about that. And then I wrote an article, it might be the one that you read, about isn't thinking billable? Right? I work with a lot of attorneys and accountants, and aren't they paying us to think at work? And if you've looked at the neuroscience, our brains are not capable of coming up at, in our aha moments. They don't happen when you're busy concentrating, right? They happen when you have space. And that's where that started for me.
Hmm. You know that story about Henry Ford?
Yes.
There was one where, if I remember the story, he had hired an accountant to go and try to cut costs. And so he was going around to all the employees. You know this story? No?
I think it might continue your story
Okay.
and then I'll
Well,
tell you.
anyway, so the guy goes to Henry Ford and says, there's a guy we need to get rid of. He's just doing nothing. And he said, what's he actually doing? He says, well, he's got his feet up on the desk and he's got his arms folded and he's quiet. He says, great. He says, what do you mean great? He said, well, when he was in that position, he came up with an idea that saved us $1 million. You know.
That's exactly it. And Henry Ford was one of the first people in that research that we did in the 100 years. Now there was, long, long, long labor movements, for like hundreds of years. There were the movement toward labor rights. And Henry Ford was one of the first to adopt the 40-hour work week.
Oh,
And
really?
and they immediately showed an increase in quality and in production numbers when their employees could, started having weekends and nights off, and their employees started buying the cars and being, their people used to take off for weekend adventures or for day-long adventures. And I thought that was kind of fascinating that you bring up the Henry Ford, because he was important in that original literature or original research that we did.
Well, do you feel personally for your life that
Mm,
that when you talk about the aha, was
mm.
the concept of allowing yourself to pause, was that your beginning point, or was there something else?
The beginning point was meditation for me. Was learning about mindfulness, and woven in mindfulness is the pause, is meditation. And then learning from various teachers. We talked a little about this with, like, I think my first was John Kabat-Zinn, because I was working with hospitals and he was brought MB, mindfulness based stress reduction, into hospitals. And then I started learning from other teachers, and it all went back to that pause. And I realized, it just really aligned with my personal experience that, I'm a creative person, and I've never been most creative when I'm doing. I'm always most creative when I'm being, when I have that space. And so the passion really came from me in that, in witnessing what has, what we learned in our studies is that, companies want their employees to take breaks, right? But do you know what we're doing when we take those breaks?
Yeah.
So in 2013, 35% of us had a smartphone. In 2023, just 10 years later, 91% have a smartphone, including children. And there is also an attention economy that in 2024, for the first time, was worth $1 trillion.
Mm.
And that's every scroll, every click, all the stuff that we buy, our attention and all of and then it counts all of the screens, like the ads and all the stuff that we're purchasing. And that is kind of what brought me to this bringing pause, like on the road, if you will. How do we talk to people about the importance of getting our heads out of these systems, out of these phones, out of these expectations and back into our center where, to our heart center, where our true knowing is, which is beautifully, aligned with your decades of work.
I
I'm
want to
just
know
a new traveler
how
here.
did you decide you were going to get on the road? So
Here.
what changed? Yeah.
Well, the first trip I took was during COVID. It was in 2021. I bought this camper van and I wanted to celebrate my nephew's birthday. And I'm not birthday, I'm sorry, for his college graduation and his birthday. We are combining them. And so I didn't want to fly. And I bought this van and I was going to sell it when I got home. I went out, took him on an adventure out west, drove back to Maine. I put like 11,000 miles on this thing. And I thought, I'm not going to sell this van. I'm going to sell the house. So I did that. Got a small, tinier house and kept the van. And at this point, like in the last year, I took 2025 off to do this program called Heroic Speaking. And Heroic Speaking it's a beautiful methodology about writing for the stage versus the page and then using principles of acting to help messages sink in. So I've been speaking publicly for 30 years. I've never studied the craft. And so I studied in this program. I graduated from this program and completed this recording part of it in December. And I thought, and I listened and I'm participating in these group discussions in this cohort that I went through with. And they're all like, all right, how are we going to get booked as keynote speakers? And what are we doing to get our messages out there? And I thought, that's not me. Like, I don't want to go out and sell myself to be a keynote. Like every lead that I've ever gotten has been through a relationship and through listening and learning and sharing. And I don't want to change that now. And so it was winter in Maine. This is like how simple this stuff happens. It's winter. And I'm like, all right, I think it's going to be a long winter in Maine. I want to get out of here for March and April. I also happen to have a camper van. And I thought, and I have now this whole body of work for a year. I updated all this research on the power of pause. And there are 3 programs that I teach. One is the power of pause. The second is around energy awareness. And so really just sensing into a framework that I learned from another teacher called To Me, By Me, Through Me. And it's very much relating to the things that you've brought through in your books around, like pushing against energy versus allowing things to be and serving as a witness and operating more from that witness space. So that's the second program. And then the third is the value of I call it curiosity versus knowing. And you mentioned it when we first started talking, is we are paid to know the answer and to be the fastest respondent. And that is the most stressful way for our bodies to operate. Because when we operate from a place from curiosity, it brings much more calm, right? It comes with space. And so I thought, I'm just going to start talking about these things. So I bought a banner. I printed these little tickets, one that I shared with you, like little bookmarks. And I said, I'm just going to go across the country and start talking with people about these systems, share these practices. I'm not looking for any money from anyone. People have been donating to my journey if they wanted to. And that's it. So I'm in week 3 and I'm going to be gone for like 9 weeks. I've had 2 pop-ups and I am going to have a more formal one at a cafe and a restaurant in when I get over into Colorado. But I'm kind of preaching to the choir here in these parks on some level because the folks that are in these parks understand the value of disconnecting. Yet I'm also having fun talking with kids who are walking around. Yesterday, two guys were walking toward me with their faces in the phones. And I just looked up and smiled at them and I said, "Are you guys texting each other?" And they both just cracked up and kept walking by, but they put their phones in their pocket. You know, that's how
You
I
caught
decided to
them.
be on it. I just decided to do it, to go on this journey and just start talking to people and hearing from others what their lived experience is with these systems. And it's fascinating. So far, I've probably talked to, I don't know, 24 people. Well, probably like 20 people maybe in the last 20 days.
This is interesting, and I want to circle back to something that you mentioned, and we kind of went over. We were talking about, I guess it was reacting and responding, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like I'd like to know from your interactions, maybe professionally or with people that in what you're doing now, these pop-up conversations. You're. It sounds to me you're trying to be giving people the space to be authentic.
I think the best answer for me to that is that I've spent my life reacting within these systems and getting frustrated and in just, like blowing up at different things at different times when I was triggered and for me, this all started because of my own learning, my own experience in moving from these places of reaction and to these places of coming from a calmer, witnessing kind of being in order to reduce my stress and respond in ways that I was more proud of. That, that brought better communication and better outcomes with people. And and so I'd say that what I've done a lot of leadership development work and done leadership development training and executive training and led retreats and things over the years. And the pause has always been that the reaction versus responding has been a core part of that work and what I learned when I first started going to leadership retreats and then began teaching them. And so I would say that it is night and day once you start practicing. And what I try to do is just help people. And you mentioned just at the very beginning of your book of how can I serve as a witness when I notice something happening without ownership, right? With, oh, this person just yelled at me about something that went wrong and take that as their response to something, not my wrongdoing, and an opportunity to ask them what they felt went wrong. To please clarify. Can you clarify what went wrong? So there's pause to notice my state at that moment, like my heart's beating out of my skin. I want to be like defensive, right?
Right, right,
And then there is awareness and the noticing, right? Of, okay, this person is feeling this. They really believe whatever they're feeling is true because this is how they're coming toward me. And then to ask a question. Can you help me understand what went wrong from your perspective? It is life-changing for me. And so giving people the the tools to try that, because again, those are things that we don't learn in, we don't like imagine, like Buddhism is something that I've been really fascinated by because it teaches about, mind, body, spirit and how the three work together, right? And we don't teach mind, body, spirit in education yet. That's exactly how our beings operate. And so I don't think I've answered your question very well, but it's really important for me to begin to help people start to access this language and these practices because these simple steps can help you move from reaction to responding, which is immensely more satisfying in your nervous system.
Well, I want to say you did answer the question because this helps the viewers understand what you mean by this art of being. It has
Yeah.
to be in the interaction between two people being authentic and understanding that we are conditioned as children through our environment, through the imprints, and probably soul contracts, that
Yes.
we come in with a nervous system that is fundamentally dysregulated. This is the
Yes.
core issue that needs to be spoken. And so, in your own way, your own aha, your own experience of what you were guided to, I see in you the willingness to go out there and offer people a sacred space where they can be invited to authenticity. So one of the
Thank you.
principles that I follow is it says space is sacred. It reveals what is real. And
Yes.
and what I've been wanting to do through my music, and I think you do this too because you're a musician. It's a completely different language that we have to offer, and it's not just the performance, it's the ability to channel, exude, extend this presence, you know? And you can't have
Yes.
presence unless
Yes.
you really access the pause and the
Absolutely.
ability to let people clarify. I like that word clarify. So
Mm.
let's do
Mm.
this, Elizabeth. I want to hear now that we've kind of got to this point. Tell me how this is playing out in your day-to-day
Mm.
life with this trip that you're on. And I want to hear it. I want to hear how you're doing this
Mm.
and how you're interacting with people. So someone can take away from this conversation, like, well, I could do that too,
Right.
right?
Right. Yes. So the first time, at first, I went out and so I speak, in front of like 500 people or 100 people or something, over the course of a few years, a regular basis. And I've initiated conferences and done all of that. There is nothing, and you're a busker, there's nothing like going and sitting in a square and just putting up a sign and saying, "Hey, you want to have a conversation?" So I was super nervous the first one. So for the first 2 weeks, I just would carry my little bookmarks in my pocket. And if I had a conversation with somebody, because when you're traveling and you're going to parks or you're on a walk or you're sitting in a square, you can say hi to someone. And so I began the first week or so just saying hi to people. And I would say, "Hey, I'm on this little journey. I don't know if you're interested in following or interested in this, but, here's a little card. And have you really thought about the concept of being? Like, it seems like we're in this doing society, doing all the time. Like, can you relate to that?" Like, 100% of the people said, "Yes, I can relate to doing, and feeling compelled to always be on." And then I just asked, "Do you have any practices of being?" And because of the places that I am, a lot of people said yes. And interestingly, a lot of younger people are already meditating and seeing the value of it and connecting in like spirit and nature. I'm just amazed. Like people 30 and under are just having deep conversations with me about spirituality and about how like they look at these systems that their parents have been in and that they've been in and they're like, "Makes no sense. We're going to redo this." And I said, "Yes, you are. And I'm going to help you."
Wow.
So there's that. I've been having conversations with people and I just give them my little card and say, please follow along, weigh in, tell me how you're doing things. And then I did the pop-up where I pulled up this banner that I had, this portable banner. And that was nerve-wracking at first. I just sat there for probably 5, 6, 7 minutes, which feels like a long time when you're just sitting next to a sign. And this young gentleman walked past me, and he works in this hospital. And he just started talking to me about, how he actually was somebody who meditates, and he's somebody who practices as he's seeing patients, kind of looking in their eyes and helping be more present with them. And he's like, "Is that it?" And I'm like, "That's exactly it. That is the art of being, is to try to strip away the shoulds and these systems of just, nonstop answering the things as fast as you can and doing the things as fast as you can, and drop back in to being present with whatever you're doing." Right? Just that pause that you talk about, the 4-4-6, where you take a breath in for 4, hold it for 4, let it out for 6. It regulates. And so I've talked about those kinds of practices. I talked with a woman about, it's just incredibly nerve-wracking for her to try and limit time on the phones with her teenagers. They are just angry if they're not able to be on their phones. And they don't, after a long day at work, who wants to deal with anger, right? It is heartbreaking. And so she and I sat and talked. I mean, it just brings tears to my eyes right now, because we talked about how hard it is in these systems to disconnect from them, to help our children have been programmed to be tied to them. And I said, our children's brains are not designed to handle that kind of dopamine, because they are being drawn in for the clicks and the likes, and then the shaming and the bullying and all these things. And so it reduces their serotonin. And that is, as you know, it helps our ability to calm and to regulate our nervous system, and to be and to make decisions. And so I've talked to a lot of parents, Kevin, that, God, I just feel for them, what they're going through with young people. And so I'd say that's probably one of my biggest, most heartfelt witnessings is what parents are dealing with right now. They're having to work in these systems of work. They're trying to manage the food system that are out there of just, food products that are not helping us in our health. And then they're managing these systems that are addictive for their children. I think parents have it rough right now. And so I want to continue just talking with people and then what I helped her talk about was, she decided that I said, "Why don't you mix it up at the end of the night? And instead of just, just saying, don't be on the phone, invite your daughter to do something. Go on a picnic for dinner instead. Invite her to do something." And because she said, I get stuck in my programs too, my TV programs, my Netflix. And so she's going to start, like, it gives me joy that she's going to start. She said that her daughter was interested in art, so she's going to look for an art class for them to take. Like, isn't that cool?
Yeah, to
Like,
just do something that's
these
non-technical,
little things.
right?
Yeah, just something that's a little bit different.
Where this is, how this is landing for me, what you're saying, it makes me kind of think about who we are as primitive beings as we've evolved. Our nervous systems were structured and designed over millennia of terrestrial environmental conditions. But
yes,
even though we have moved into this technological age, and it's just rapid information age, and the things that we have, our nervous systems have not changed.
They have not evolved.
So
I mean, they're not to that.
the primitive brain is still wired to scan for threat,
Yes.
and now that we understand, it's only been in the last, I think, less than 30 years that neuroscience has come along with some valid research about how the chemical cocktails in our brains happen.
Yes.
And one of the things that I've become aware of personally is there's a time period between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. where your cortisol levels drop, and it's to prepare you for waking up.
Yes.
And being super cognizant and aware of my internal environment, I notice I wake up with this anxiety. And, what you start doing is start kind of self analyzing. It's like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me?
Yes.
And I think a lot of people in our society have this same phenomenon. In fact, I wanted to mention that even in Islam, they teach that the dark forces will tempt you in the early morning. Well, they observed that there was a real neurological phenomenon. So they say you need to get up early, And so what I finally decided to start doing, and this fits into what I think is crucial to the message that you and I are both talking about, is to make it a habit to find a place in your home that's comfortable and just get up and sit and be. Don't plan. Just do the 4-4 breathing, because that affects the polyvagal nervous system, which runs from the brain down to the lower abdomen. And that's your parasympathetic nervous system. So when you breathe 4-4-6, you breathe out longer than you breathe in. That's signaling to the nervous system, you're safe, you're rested. This is something that, because of our scanning brain, people really would benefit to learn, to honor this.
Yes.
So I'd like to hear you speak on ways that perhaps any of us could start encouraging that with others, especially. And this encapsulates what, in my mind, what you're talking about, the art of being.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I share with people is a concept is a practice called first hour free. So the first hour when we wake up in the morning, most people don't know that you're up, right? And if you have a family and you have those responsibilities, just get up 1 hour earlier and have that be free from devices, from looking at anything, like the news or anything like that, and be present with yourself. Be present while you're making a cup of coffee, or be present while you just sit quietly and hear. Like, I have a practice in the morning where I say, who am I here to serve today? Who am I to be today? And or what am I, who bring me who I am to serve, and then help me be who I am to be at my highest power in that service of another. And that can be for work, for your children, for yourself, most importantly, first. We're taught that self-care is selfish. And so helping convert our thinking to these free moments. Maybe you can't do first hour free. You can do first 20 minutes free. You can do first, allow yourself to just get up. And the other thing, that 3 to 5 a.m., I've been having lots of conversations about the 3 to 5 with people, because it is when the veil is thinnest. That's language I've been using. The veil is thin then, and because the cortisol is the lowest. And also, can we think of it as the time of allowing ourselves to receive the light, to receive spiritual light in that time, and to push away any dark, because it can, we're always in light and dark choices. And so we can allow ourselves to just say, This isn't for the dark. This is for the light to come in if I wake up in the middle of the night. And I wake up at those times. And what I'll say is, this is my time for rest. And I will literally just say the word rest slowly in breathing 100 times if I have to. And I will drift back to sleep if I know, that I need that rest right then. If I can get up and be still, that's lovely too. I've been up at 3 a.m. and a full writing has come through or a song has come through. It's a time of receiving. It can be a time of receiving. And so that's a practice that I would share aligned with what you just said. And the being for me is 3 things. It is the pause at any given moment to come back into your center. You are an important, abundant, beautiful soul on this planet, every single one of us. So coming back to that being spot in the face of all the doing is the pause, is number 1. Number 2 is just having practices of staying, whether it's moment by moment. Those neuroscience, the functional MRIs show that 10 minutes, 1 minute at a time over the course of a day can be as powerful as a 10-minute pause at the beginning of your day. Because our systems need to learn how to come back to the pause. And then the third is that place of curiosity versus knowing. Like, be curious, be a witness in your day. Witness the silly things you do or the stressful things you do or the things that you do on repeat, and come to them with a little bit of silliness and grace, right? Like, oh, I'm doing that thing again, right? And allow yourself to come back to a place of just, I'm going to try it again. I'm going to try it again because there might be a behavior that I want to change. And then with others that are in our field, right? People that we work with, people in our family, our loved ones that, can be our highest triggers because we're in our most vulnerable places with them. Come to them with more curiosity and grace. That's hard.
What's really beautiful about what you said, Elizabeth, is that if a person takes that quiet time in the morning as a structured priority, and they take that time to center and then practice the pause throughout the day and the curiosity, what that makes me realize is that the pause becomes a micro moment of that greater moment in the morning when we are struggling with that cortisol, problem. But the curiosity, the pause allows the curiosity so that when someone is reacting on you, instead of taking it personal, your nervous system can step back and say, tell me more. And that's kind of what my vision for non-reactive intelligence, and especially the emptying path, is for man and woman to become the microcosm of Shiva Shakti and that divine interplay between the divine masculine and divine feminine, which are always one. But we need to manifest that in personal relationships. And it starts with these skills that you are articulating. So anyway, that's my comment on that.
That's really it for me right now. Is I had these grand visions. I'm going to throw up a thing in a square. There's going to be 50 people gather around, and why would they gather around? They have no idea who I am. They probably think I'm selling something. It's really the thinking for me as I come into these quiet spaces. Like this morning, I woke up in quiet, and I said, oh, I'm right next to the canyon. I should go in and do an early morning sunrise hike. Like, no, I'm going to be still. I'm going to be still. I'm going to watch the birds interact, watch the elk or the little deer and thing, go around the park, listen to the ravens. And I feel so good listening to that voice. And I really am just here for each moment. I'm here to serve, and I'm here for the moments as they unfold. And that is the journey. Like there, and then I'm sharing it as I'm called to share it. I share it visually on, ironically, I use Instagram to connect with people. And I've learned to limit it to like 30 to 45 minutes a day. That's it. I do that, I put it away. And the same with, different aspects. So I think it's important to say that, these tools are there. You're using these tools. I'm using these tools. They can be really beautiful in helping us to connect, to learn, to advance things that we're trying to share, just like this podcast, right? And we can begin to see them as tools, not as places that we um have to spend time, that we have to master, right? I get to use these tools as I am called, as I am shown that a particular tool, as you were in writing these books, can be useful. And that to me is kind of a magical place that I'm just discovering each day on this journey. I went into this journey in the power, the art of being, with a lot of frickin' doing in my brain. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do
Yeah.
that. I'm going to do that. Like to share with everyone. And it's like, oh my God, like I was going at it with a plan. No, no.
It's
Be the
interesting.
rock in the pond, just have one conversation. Let that ripple as it may.
This makes me think about why I articulated this as the emptying path, because a year ago, came back from Mexico, and I shared this story with you. And I came back from a spiritual community that I had a lot of hopes that it was going to be my people. And I realized there was such a mismatch in energies. And I'm in this foreign country. I can't speak the language. I don't know how to get around. And it was more than my nervous system could process. I
Yeah.
came home, and I started saying, I have to stop this emotional meltdown reactivity, because it's fear-based, right?
Yes.
And what I thought of, and I don't know if I shared this in the book, but you remember that beautiful TV series with David Carradine, Kung Fu?
Yes.
Well, there was a
Yes.
line in there where he's talking to a fundamentalist, and she says, do you want to, be a Christian? He says, well, I have a path, and I wish to follow it. And she says, well, what is your path? And he says this incredible line. He says, I seek to be a cup empty of myself and filled with oneness. And I wrote the emptying path based on that idea. Is this possible?
Yes.
Can I empty? Can I not cherish my opinions?
Right. Right.
I can have my opinions, but can I not cherish them?
Right.
And that alone started this whole journey. And that's why, I'm meeting people like you. This is why I'm here in Arizona now.
Yes.
It just opened this whole new terrestrial landscape.
It's beautiful.
So,
thank you.
Okay, well, before we wrap this up, I want to ask you this. So, for people who are not familiar with anything that we're talking about, let's talk about, how would you suggest to someone to embrace or experiment with this idea of taking the pause, or the art of being? What could you offer to someone who's like, I like what you guys are saying, but I have no
Mm.
idea how to begin?
I like to begin with 60 seconds. That's how I begin meetings. That's how I begin before I join this call, before I join a conversation when I'm able. 60 seconds. It was a powerful thing. It was 10 years ago that I did a circle with 123 people at the Chamber of Commerce, of all things. 123 women, actually, at the women's group. And I began, or during the course of that talk, I just paused for I just said, I'd like you to settle and just, you can stare at the floor. You can close your eyes if you feel comfortable. And then I will let you know when you can come back into presence into the circle. And all I did was count to 60. And to this day, 10 years later, people come up to me and say that they remember to pause. 60 seconds. And you can start a meeting like that. You can say, hey, we've all been busy here today in our work, right? We're going to come into this meeting. We're just going to be quiet for 60 seconds. Collect your thoughts about why you're even in this meeting. What are we trying to accomplish? You can do that before talking with a loved one about something. I have a dear girlfriend of mine, and sometimes before we have a conversation, we're just like, oh, let's just pause for 60 seconds. Let's just let everything else go. And then let's come into this conversation together. And that's it. Not kidding. 60 seconds at a time.
Can you imagine offering that to children when they're growing up and their little nervous systems are fried from too much stimulus? And the parent just sits there with them and just smiles at them and and is present.
My dear friend started a yoga program for schools in Denver, and it's still there, but she has I'm just going to say it here because it's so powerful for parents. It's called Roots Up, ROOTSUP. And she's been doing this for 20 years. She's a yoga teacher. She's does energy management. She's incredible. And she has all these little videos for parents to do exactly what you said,
Mm.
with just to help children learn about their nervous systems. It's like you see a video and she'll be in a class and these kids are like, wow, like they're 3 and 4 years old. And then they're like, Miss Julie, let's try that breath. And it's like, it is just that, Kevin. It's the 60 seconds. And you could just see, like, I see these videos of the kids in the Netherlands, or in Italy, in an outdoor area like this on little mats. They're like 2, 3 years old in daycare, taking naps. And they're out in nature. And it's so good for them. So good for us too.
We need to do an invite. So anybody watching this, if you
Yes.
practice the 60 seconds, please write it in the comments, share what you experience.
Yes, please.
Well, Elizabeth, this has been a fantastic talk. I have enjoyed this, and we really need to do another one soon.
I'd love
Whenever,
to keep sharing this.
yeah, this is
As we
important
learn.
stuff. Yeah.
Thank you.
Tell me about your music real quick. I know you're a great singer. You've got
Thank you.
We had fun singing together.
That was really
The
fun.
heck out of Bonnie Raitt. Yeah.
Well, because now I am an old woman.
Named after your mother.
An elder, exactly. Truth, so true. Let's see. It's Elizabeth Ross music. You can find me on Spotify and what's the other one? Apple. And I love singing, and now I'm starting to do more with like drum, and I'm going to post one of those. I kind of had an idea for a fire and a drum and a little, I kind of channel this I call her this Mayan princess who uses my voice when I use the drum. And so to me, singing, crying, laughing, they come from this same chakra area, right? Heart, sacral, like all this beautiful core energy, and they help us connect. And so for me, singing and music and just, your writing is beautiful. Your songs are just beautiful. And that's what it's about. It's just about sharing and helping people calm.
Well, I want everybody to go to the description box. I'm going to put all your links. You said you have an Instagram, you have a new
Thank you.
Substack page, right? And then your music, and we'll have all that there. And I would really like to hear from viewers about this conversation, and ask us some questions.
Please share with us.
We could talk, because this just is the beginning of opening a doorway that it's not new information, I don't feel, but it's being refined in articulation for this present age, right?
Yes. And it's non-guru, right? There's been beautiful work done by all of these gurus shared over the centuries. There's been beautiful scientific work. I feel like it's really important for us to share that each one of us is the guru. Each one of us is the beautiful being that is needed at this time.
It's funny you say that. I don't know if you've noticed, but at the end of my videos, before I post the link to the book, I write, "No guru, no method, no therapy."
It's just right. Yes.
All right, well, let's say goodbye here. God bless you.